So please welcome Brandon Beachum to the show. Welcome, Brandon.
Hello, hello. How are you,
Hello.
Ashley?
I'm so good. Coming from LA, right? Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, I'm in Venice Beach.
Okay. I used to live there
Oh, you did?
in my journey of discovering as I was floating around in my 20s trying to
Mm,
figure out life.
mm-hmm.
Yes, I
It's a
stopped
good
there
place to
for,
it's a good place to float to, I would say, for some, you know, unique life experience.
yeah, it was good. Um, Memories, growth,
Mm,
everything's about growth, right?
indeed.
So I've been doing this podcast over like 3.5 years, say, but I know Positive Head has been out since 2015.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I always, I think, you know, just when you Google or you go onto Apple Podcast and you see like, oh, if you like this podcast, you go to this one. So I had to have found you that way. And so
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you've been in my ear for a few years.
Oh,
And I feel like, the words that we speak now, the 2020 came into our life and, it like sped up this opening of the
mm-hmm.
universe.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you've talked about for the last, 10 years or so is now common language,
It
more
really
so.
is.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes. It's been a unique journey for me. My uh I guess re-dash remembering, as I like to put it, awakening to remembering the ultimate nature of reality, and that I'm one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things, and we're all reflections of one another. There's one of us in the listening to this podcast at any given time from one perspective. And that for me was like mid to late 90s where I really started uh, having that, books like Conversations with God. I just had Neil Donald Walsh on
I heard.
my podcast, Positive Head, and that was a cool, like, I really wanted to have him for years because those books were so influential in my own journey. And at the time I was like, oh my gosh, I can do anything, I'm gonna make music. And I started a band, and we were talking about consciousness and that sort of thing, and people were like, what are these guys smoking? We were called Kundalini, and our bass,
Oh, wow.
our singer, we would paint. He's like 6'5". We would paint all the chakras on him, and we'd have Alex Gray art behind us on on a big screen. And at the time, this is like 99, 2000, 2001. People were like, what the heck? Now I'm very kind of enmeshed, I guess you would say, in the transformational festival community, like Burning Man and
Right.
similar type transformational festivals. A lot of my friends put those on, and we sort of do festivals for a day here at my place in Venice. And now it's like I go to one of those events, and every 21-year-old's like, yeah, duh, of course I know I'm one with
Right.
everything. Like, that's old
Right.
news. But it's really been an interesting, because even back then, before social media and the ability to connect with people so easily, it was books, and these people were authors at a distance. You had no way of reaching them. And those were the only people I really knew that were seeing and tapping into this stuff. And now it's just everywhere around me.
Right.
And so, and there was a lot of predictions. This is what's coming, right? And
Right.
it has.
Right.
So it's been pretty cool to.
When you say like the 21-year-olds, I know
Mm-hmm.
your son is 24 and
Mm-hmm.
I have daughters in their teenage years. Tell me your take and what you believe in these kids that are coming in right now with this, experiencing your son. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
10 years older than my youngest, but
Mm-hmm.
at that vibrational level, and why they're so open to all this. Is it just, you tell me?
Great question. I think you have, we are in a sense the passing the baton forward genetically. And I have a lot of synchronicity and serendipity I talk about on my podcast. And I look at my father. One of my big synchronicities is my birthday. It's like I have this whole
July 28th.
oh, you've heard it. That's right. So it's my dad's birthday too. And and my grandmother's, and on. It's a whole story, as you probably heard. And I look at him as like, okay, he's my father, and he's very into his spirituality in a very fear-based way. It's very dogmatic, conservative Christian, a lot of like, I better get this right or dad is gonna, burn me for eternity.
Right.
Um, And so I can see, and and I don't say this with any ego or anything, but it's like, oh, it's like a less evolved version of me in a way. And then I
Mm-hmm.
look at my son, and I remember when he was born, getting an astrological chart reading, and she was like, the woman was like, oh, you have one of the most successful charts I've seen. And she was an intuitive. She goes, wow, but your child, they're like a golden child, and everything they'll touch, and will be amazing. And he's really has been, he's just got some really cool things happening with his acting career, and he's just like such a clear, kind. I still get handwritten cards, that
Oh,
are like poetry for my birthdays or whatever. And it's like, it's just reeks of a very advanced soul, and so I think that's really what's happening. Is I think you're having a lot of older souls coming in at this time to help steward us through the transition,
mm-hmm.
from, something old has to die in order for something new to be born. And that's why it looks as messy as it does. You don't, make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Right,
It looks
right,
very messy for the caterpillar before it becomes a butterfly.
right.
Like, I'm going to melt into a goo first. And, so yeah, that's my take.
Yeah,
And
wait, let's go to the butterfly because I
mm,
was your book. Well, I just want to, because we were talking, you just said butterfly.
mm.
That's where humanity is going, you say in your book.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. In the Golden Key, I write about the metamorphosis and journey of the butterfly, and kind of compare it metaphorically to humanity. And it's like, the butterfly starts out as, of course, as a caterpillar. And I was telling my mother about this, and it was perfect, because I was like, well, caterpillars, they pretty much just consume and destroy everything in their path, essentially, without abandon. No, my mother was like, you're right, my geraniums have been eaten alive by these
oh,
stupid
funny.
caterpillars. And but what happens is as this caterpillar is doing its thing, at some point in its journey, uh a cell appears within the caterpillar, they call imaginal cells. And at first, the caterpillar cell's kind of like, hold on, this doesn't belong here. This is an invader. Kill it, destroy it. And they effectively do, stamp it out. But then another one pops up, and then another. And then eventually many pop up, and they start working together. And at some point, the tide shifts within the caterpillar, which throws the caterpillar into complete chaos, like I referenced. And it goes into the chrysalis, and the caterpillar cells turn into a goo that it essentially melts down, and all the destruction that the caterpillar precipitated now becomes a fuel for the imaginal cells to consume and transmute that caterpillar into, of course, the imaginal cells are the blueprint for the butterfly. And out of the chaos of the caterpillar, the butterfly is born, and couldn't be without the fuel that from the destroyed geraniums. So I think it's such a perfect metaphor for what's happening with humanity, right? We're going through this transitionary process, and there's a lot of ugliness and destruction and things, and that is the fuel to birth us into, the next version of ourselves. And yeah, I think there's a lot of like advanced souls that are coming in to help steward us through that
I
process
know.
too.
I've interviewed people, I'm not at 2000 yet, but I'm at almost 200.
That's a lot.
Haven't missed a week since I
That's
started. So
that's
I'm
a
really
lot.
proud of that.
Good. Yeah, you should be.
But interviewing people, because I started the podcast in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I didn't know why I started it. It was this inspired thought, and I thought, start a podcast. Like, who's saying that? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
hello, who was
yeah.
saying that? Like, so I do, because I'm about saying yes to. I'm very, and that's important. That's a
Mm-hmm,
tool
mm-hmm.
that I teach my children. Is when you are listening to your intuition or something's telling you to do something, just do it. You don't know
Yeah,
if it's going to
yeah.
be right. You'll just go.
Right, right, right.
And so my journey on this podcast, and that's what I want to ask you too, um, is my like story. It's my growth. It's like going back to reading my book of where I was at in 2020 in April when my first episode went out to today talking to you. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, right?
Yeah.
And it's grown me so much, and it's become this passion for me to watch who I, like I listened to you know, but we listen to the similar, we're all on the same, we're
Mm-hmm.
definitely in the same soul group. But
Mm-hmm.
like Bashar, Neil Donald
Yeah.
Walsh,
Yeah.
Lee Harris, you know, he was just on my show. Paul
Lovely.
Selig was just on. But, you know, all
Amazing.
these people that we connect with, that we've learned from. And it just, I feel like it's just speeding up. Like I feel like we're just
Exponential
going,
growth.
yes, right? You take it, tell me how
Yeah,
you feel about that.
I think you're 100% right. We all play the role of teacher and student at different times and in different moments. And I think in the new world that's emerging, that's going to be an important thing, to be fluid and understand how to read the energy. Actually, one of the first spiritual centric books I ever read, might be the first, actually, now that I think about it, was the Celestine Prophecy.
Me too. That
And
is
they
so,
talk about how the
yes,
future is it the first. What a great intro. And I actually had James Redfield on years back, and you know, they talk about how the future is all about group dynamics and understanding, oh, this is my time, for this is the moment, the energy is moving through me to take the baton, and I am the one that's supposed to lead in this moment. Okay, now I'm supposed to follow, now I'm supposed to, you know, and we sort of all take turns and understand how to work together so that the sum is greater than the equal parts, instead of this ego, I am the one, I am the leader, you know. And I think that's a pitfall for a lot of people. It's sort of a rite of passage on your spiritual journey, this like, I am the one, because you are the one, but don't get it too twisted, because everyone is the one, you know, so you
right.
are no more special or less special than anyone. And so, yeah, I think understanding the sum is greater than the equal parts. And if I'm looking at, you know, through the lens of, I teach best what I most need to learn. And the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And that everyone I interact with has something to teach me in some way, shape, or form, especially if that old part of energy and part of myself that's maybe judging or looking down my nose at, you know, like, what could this person have to offer me? I mean, you know, obviously look at how they dress, or whatever it is that's these old patterning. That's when you really should tune in and like, okay, there's something here for you. And yeah, my own partner's been really good at demonstrating that and helping me in that journey of like, you know, the way she approaches everyone is like, okay, there's something valuable here. And especially if there's some part of me that's maybe turned off, you know. And it doesn't mean you subject yourself to these uncomfortable situations and let's hang out all day every day. But if, you know, if and when you are, you know, in a life has brought you together, like, okay,
Right.
what is it that I can, you know, like you said early on, we're here to grow. That is our soul's aim, you know, not to say how to have the medal for the longest relationship of all time, or to have hung in there, you know, to suffer for the kids or the job or whatever. It's like, you come to, in all interaction is about growth. And once that opportunity has been realized to its fullest, I think a natural separation occurs in
Right.
whatever is happening.
Yeah. Explain to me like a soul versus the higher self versus, like, how do you describe a soul and
Mm,
why we come here and where we
mm,
come from and all that?
great question. And, you know, who can say 100% until we have seen and felt and experienced all aspects of ourselves? But, you know, it's pretty obvious that we are composite beings in a sense. Like right now, you know, I'm made up of cells that are their own living entity, that have their own agenda, that have their own job, that have their own, you know, life force. They probably have individual personalities, like to some degree, some reflection of what we would call a personality, right?
Right.
And then that makes up this character. You know, from one perspective, I think, you know, we are cells in the body of this earth, and we collectively make up, you know, us and all animals. You know, it's like, if you were to look, I've heard it said, if you were to look at our planet from an extraterrestrial sort of standpoint, it's really, what is the collective resonance of the beings? You know, it's like kind of a one, it muddies together until you zoom in, and now, okay, you know, who is Ashley, who is Brandon, you know, that gets more granular. But I think that sort of plays out throughout, and it makes sense with the fractal nature of reality, everything is nested within everything. It's like Russian nested dolls. So it's just degrees of separation that source is playing out. So, here I am, an autonomous personality and avatar and being as playing Brandon Beachum, but yet there's a soul that makes up and is sort of stewarding the meat suit, and it is part of a bigger soul group or soul family that at some point is collectively the same being, but can be divided out and then is collected, again above that, and ultimately it's all the same one, right?
Right.
And so I think this is how source sort of experiences herself throughout eternity. It's like, oh, let me look through different lenses of separation and unification, and of course without one the other doesn't exist, and it's that contrast that makes it all mean anything.
Right. The timelines. I know Bashar, I listened to him a lot, and
Yeah, he's
he's a
amazing.
dream guest, and that's going to be on my
Yes,
dream list.
do it. I just
Coming
had
up.
him, so that was on mine for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But he talks a lot about it's all happening. We're all in different, I'm everywhere all at once,
Mm-hmm.
happening. Everything's happening right now, the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
And I listen back, talk about growth. I can't even go back to the beginning. And when I started asking questions about, I've learned, I really have grown, wrapped my head around time and that aspect that everything is happening right now.
Yeah.
And we are happening and I love, because you talk about this a lot. Will you
Mm-hmm.
explain that?
Yeah. So yeah, the way, and of course, what's great is science really supports us. For those who need a strong dose of science in their world, Einstein proved this. If you shoot me in outer space and bring me back a day later, I'm a day older, and you've been dead 100 years or whatever. So something like that. So
Right.
it's time is relative, right? And so essentially, what's happening, I mean, right now your 5th birthday party is happening on another channel. You're just not tuned into it. Your future, your 95th, let's say you stay in physical up until 95, that's happening right now on another channel. It's all in the eternal now, and that's why the future can affect the now the same way the past can affect the now. And I think that's really how people even step into those future timelines. They be it to see it. Well, if I wanted this particular timeline, if the way I break it down is our life plays out at the corner of free will and destiny.
Mm-hmm.
It's destined because it's all already happened. Time is an illusion, right?
Right.
And free will comes in because source is infinite in its ability to create. Now, some people say, well, there's infinite timelines. I don't know about like, let's say the avatar Brandon Beachum. There's many timelines from this moment forward and versions of me that exist and play out. I don't know that there's one where I try out for the Lakers and become the center on next year's starting lineup. Probably not,
Right.
So I think within certain avatars have a certain set of potentiality within it has a vibe. It has a, okay, it's going to be born here in this country. They're going to have these parents. And then, so our aim, I believe, is to, from this moment forward, to get in line with the greatest and grandest version of our avatar from this moment forward. So it's destined because it's all already happened. And free will comes in because there's many versions of us to choose from this moment forward. Well, which one do we want to choose? The greatest and grandest version, the one that's the most rewarding, right?
Right.
No matter how unlikely or against all odds or grandiose, source has been there, done that, and gotten the t-shirt, because time is an illusion. So you're getting the opportunity to, this is why, using in conversations with God talks about this, learning how the game works in this way. You don't do something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy. You be something like happy, and you find yourself doing and having things that are a reflection of that.
Right.
And that's really how we navigate the timelines. You be it to see it.
Right.
And that is that formula. And like all these sort of perspectives or philosophies or concepts, at the end of the day, results speak the loudest. And I found that And there's a lot of evidence to support, stepping into the future energetically that you wish. Actually, as Bashar talks about, you're flitting in and out of timelines constantly, kind of like a movie screen, right? Or a film, if you're watching a film, it's flickering, light particles so fast, and it looks congruent, but it's really flicker. Well, that's what's happening with your cells, the atoms that make you up. You're not solid at all. They're 99.99999% space. What we call solid are these vibrations that are popping in and out of existence so quickly that they give us the illusion of solidity when it's really just all vibration. So, by tapping into the energy of these timelines that we wish to step into, it's kind of like a honing, beacon, if you will, and it navigates you there.
Right. Do you feel like you always have a choice to come back, or do you think your soul evolves enough to where they don't need to come back to Earth?
It gets tricky because it's hard to wrap our little hamster brains around, the answer to your question. I would say, based off of my ability to compute such a mind-bending question, is yes to both. Do you get the option to move on? Yes. And do you get the option to always come back? Yes. I think it's all happening now. And so I think we segment ourselves in some way to give ourselves these different levels of experience,
Mhm.
and then, I've heard, I don't know if you're familiar with Journey of Souls or Destiny of Souls, the books by Michael Newton. I've read them on my podcast. They're great books. He would put people for 40 years in hypnosis and take them through past lives. And then, okay, you just died in the past life. Now what? And it would document life between lives. And he documented hundreds, thousands of cases. And it was really interesting because he's a doctor, is very scientific, and has, seeing the correlation between these different people's stories and the way soul families operate and how we return, and all the similarities. And one thing he talked about is like there's like a nursery over there, in a sense, where new souls come in. And it's like, well, are they really new souls, or are these souls that maybe went all the way through the existence to the ultimate of being God and said, okay, I want to, with eternity in front of me, I want to start over and do it again. It's like this never ending, wheel of existence. And after infinite quadrillion years, if you're going to use time, like, I'm bored of this, I want to reset. Okay, I'll be a baby again, a baby soul, start over, but do it different this time. So it's a lot to think about. What we are is not for the faint of heart.
No, that's for sure. Ainsley McLeod, do you know who that is? Have
No,
you
I
heard of
don't.
him?
Mm-mm.
He talks about, he can tell how old your soul is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's
Cool.
another dream guest.
Oh,
And
wow.
he wrote neat
Ainsley
books.
McCloy?
Yes.
I'll
He
check him
lives
out.
in Seattle, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he can tell you how old, if you're a 10 old soul, he can see where you're at what level.
Wow.
Let's talk about your book. So you wrote a book in 2020.
I did.
And what inspired that?
As you mentioned, Positive Head, my podcast, I've just crossed 2,000 episodes. I'm pretty verbose, as you can see. Any of you hearing me for the first time, I have a lot to say, a lot to share. And I wanted to create something that was fun for people to share, that distilled what my 25 years of deep exploration of the ultimate nature of reality and my version and way of explaining it, and just putting my twist and energy on it, something that was concise and not, you don't have to listen to it. It's like taking 2,000 episodes and putting it into, okay, if I wanted to write something 100 pages or 3 hours to listen to on the audiobook, this would be it. And it's, I was like, okay, well, how would I present this information? Well, what are the keys that I found over 25 years of, walking this path? And so that's what I did, is I broke down the 8 keys. The golden key is the name of the book, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. And so how do you unlock your most abundant self? Which, of course, abundance being, all the forms of abundance, not just monetary, like oftentimes people equate that term towards,
So you just, in 2020, you're like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to sit down.
As typically happens with me, synchronicity, spirit communication, I had a dream that then led me to like, you know, oh, this dream is giving me the idea that I should create a book, and here's what the name should be. And then I find the name of the book, and I Google it, and then I had this idea for kind of a gamification aspect to it. And then I Google it, and someone used the golden key in 1930. Let me check this out. Oh, wow. He did this whole gamification kind of thing with it too,
Oh, cool.
And then, when was the version re-released in modern times? Oh, on my birthday. And so it just kind of continued from there. And then I talked to my friend who did the cover art, and that was really cool, because I went to him and said, hey, I had this dream, and, the spiritual breadcrumbs, as they continue to do with me, led me that I'm going to write this book, The Golden Key. Would you help me? He's an incredible visionary artist. His name is Vajra, Vajra. If you want to check him out, he's so talented. And so I was talking to him about, would he help me with the cover art? And he said, well, now I told him my whole spiel, and, and he's like, well, now let me tell you about my dream. He's like, I was at the Mystic Manor, which is the name of the co-living and event space that me and my partner run in Venice. And I was hunting for the key to everything. And he goes into this whole dream of him at the Mystic Manor looking for the key to everything. And then he's like, and the dream was so inspiring. He got out his journal where he wrote all about it. And he's like, I've actually already started doing art around the stream. And here's my first one. So it had already begun before I even asked.
Wow. Can we go into I know you talk about them, and I kind of want to expand a little bit on why of each one. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to just rattle off kind of the keys? Would that be?
Yeah, but I want to understand like just a little bit of why, because they're picking 8 things that really pulled it together. Like, why were those so significant?
Well, they're kind of lay the foundation for me in sort of, the first key, see the oneness. The second key, know the illusion. Third key, focus your flow. Fourth key, align your intentions. The fifth key is BBB. The sixth key is trust the mystery. Seventh key, love what comes. And the eighth key, the golden key, is master the YOU, master the universe. So those are the keys to rattle them off. And yeah, I mean, why them? It's just, as I put pen to paper and started thinking, okay, if I were to try and summarize and be as concise as possible, what are some of the, sort of high level things that I have applied to create pretty incredible results in my own life? And yeah, that's just kind of what I landed on. And, I think, the foundational key, seeing the oneness, I mean, understanding that is I feel like that is like the elephant in the room for beginning the journey. Until you understand that everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself. There's only one of you. It's always you reflecting you back to you. You're living life through a lens of, there is no out there. It's all reflecting you back to you in some way, shape, or form. That's got something for you in it. What if you love it, if you don't like it, anything in between, it's showing you something that is somehow a vibrational match to you, that will lead you to the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. And so understanding that fundamentally, this idea that, everywhere I go, I'm there waiting for myself. I think it's just absolutely foundational to, how are you going to play a game effectively if you don't understand the nature of the rules and the nature of the situation in which you find yourself. Right. And that's, to just speak to that as an example of, seeing through the illusion, understanding that you are in a, looking at some of the science around, the sort of a lot of the evidence supporting that we're in a holographic reality or simulation, if you will. And like, okay, I'm in a game. What are the rules? What's going on here? How do I level up? And so, yeah.
You talk about like chess and checkers.
Yeah. I often say that it's like a lot of times we're, our human is playing checkers but our higher self is playing chess. And what I mean by that is like, you have a lot of ideas about what is best for you, you know? Um, and life's what happens when your plans don't work out oftentimes. It's like understanding kind of like, not the hugest Rolling Stones fan, but I love the song and the concept behind the song of you can't get what you want, but you'll get what you need. That
Mm-hmm.
understanding that that's true. So you can have an idea based off of your data points, desires, thoughts, your human self, what it would choose to do next as its greatest path, an outcome. It's important to temper that with, and I trust there's something, a bigger part of myself that I'm doing this dance with, my higher self, and may have something different in mind that I can't see from my 2D version of looking at a checkerboard versus chess, which is much more complex, right?
Right.
So having those expectations, a lot of people say that expectation is the enemy. It's a
Yeah.
problem. You shouldn't. I don't agree with that. I think expectations are natural and you need to have them. You should have them and you can't escape having them. It's the attachment to them that is where the problem comes in.
Right.
Understanding that, as Esther Hicks or Abraham talks about, this or
Mm-hmm.
something better. I have
Right.
an idea. This is the direction I'm going. And if that didn't pan out that way, it's because it's not really for me. And, but maybe it got me to go in a direction that led me
Exactly.
to where I'm supposed to be. So,
Exactly. You have a thing about visualization and how you put it to the right of how your life is. And then,
yeah. Referencing like the Jose Silva's method
yes.
of mind control and understanding how to manifest, and just it's something that I started. I've done visualization exercises,
Oh,
kind of
me
my own
too.
way forever, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I find it getting in that state of excitement and feeling what it feels like is really an important piece of manifesting and stepping into the timeline, as I stated. But this guy Jose Silva decades ago came up with a whole technique that I think is really simple and powerful to doing this. And it's, taking, when you wake up in the morning, particularly getting in that in between awake and asleep state is the ideal sort of brainwave state to be in. And uh, just he gives some techniques for, and to step yourself through, find a really good feeling, something that a good memory, for example, in that receptive, loving, open state it'll put you in, and count backwards from 199, 98, 97, and looking at your third eye or your forehead with your eyes closed. Something about doing those things together helps to put you in that state, and especially if you've just woken up in the morning or gotten up to use a bathroom and back in bed, you're still in that in-between-ish state. This helps to put you back there, and then count all the way down to zero, focusing on that feel good feeling, focusing on your third eye or hairline, and then now start picturing your life as it is in front of you, and just feeling and all the things that are you and make up your world, the challenges, the good things, the job, the relationship, what it's like with the kids, whatever, just what's true. Right now, move to the left in your mind's eye and imagine your idealized version, and now really feel into it and dream big and visualize, all the things that if your greatest and greatest self were existing, this is what you envision it would feel and look like. And then move it from the left to the center, which in your subconscious mind, center is now, left is future, and then it moves it in. And this exercise doing on a daily basis is a really easy, you're still laying in bed, kind of 10-15 minutes. I find it really nice and gratifying. Not only does it feel really good to move into that energy of
Mm-hmm.
that future self that does exist, and sort of flirting with that self,
Right.
across, time and space and parallel realities, etc. It's it calls it in, and it's, you feel like you've really like touched it and tasted it, and it's that much closer. And so, yeah, that's a technique that you've probably heard me talk about recently is one that
Right.
I've really been enjoying
Well, I
using
love
to
it.
give it some structure. It gives it some level of structure to the visualization process.
Right. Like when, back whenever, I think when Paige was born, The Secret came out, and, it's like, people always say there was missing things and whatever. We've
Mm-hmm.
heard it. Everyone listening has heard that
Mm-hmm.
story.
Sure,
But,
sure.
when I get to this place of, I used to be a diver, like
Mm-hmm.
growing up, like
Mm.
just on the springboard.
Cool.
And I really remember, like, I wasn't the best, but I'd always win because I was taught to visualize it and
Yeah.
how it would end. Right.
Yeah.
And I learned that so early in my life that when I now, like with raising children, and I teach teenagers, and this podcast has evolved into a class that I teach now with
Cool.
teens.
Amazing.
Oh, it's so amazing. And I
What a
realize that's
great thing to
my,
do to affect them at that age too.
yes. And what's neat is that we know we program. I was an intentional parent because I was
Mm-hmm.
older, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'd done all the work. And so, I was programming them. I knew up until 7, they were 80% programmed. We were reading 4 agreements, like, then we,
Wow.
all the things, gratitude,
Lucky
all the
kids.
things. Oh gosh. But when I realized, like, you know, when you raise your kids with that intention, and you see, like, now I'm living in the teenage years, and I'm like, it worked.
Yeah.
But you don't know it is when you're doing it.
I know. I know.
So now it's like, oh my gosh, it worked.
Yeah.
But
It feels good.
yes. But I have always taught the way you just described, that Silva method, the visualization,
Mm-hmm.
since they were little, like even getting a grade, like what does it feel like when she tells you you got an A, or,
That's what Silva started with his children,
oh, okay.
training them for school. And that's when it just like
Oh,
the results were mind blowing, and all the
yeah.
other parents wanted him to, like,
So
help.
powerful. Yeah.
And what you said about diving, my grandfather, same thing. He was and my father were both like state champion skeet shooters.
Oh, okay.
And I grew up in Virginia, and that's the thing they did. They
Right.
won like father and son and individual championships, and my grandfather, not even remotely spiritual man, and what was aware. He would visualize seeing the clay pigeon break before he shot it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's powerful. You're literally like, this is a dream, and there's many versions of the dream, and you're navigating it with your vibrational offering.
Right.
It's so empowering to understand that, and especially for people. There's so many people that get caught up in like, but I don't have I'm not as blessed as Ashley or Brandon, or I don't have this going for me, or that, or whatever story around their disempowerment.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to put it down. You are in the perfect place. Perfect. You couldn't ask for a better position for you to be in, to step into the next greatest and grandest version of yourself. Source is perfect. It's got you right where it wants you.
Yeah.
And so understanding like reality is so malleable, and things can change like that. And if you can start being it to see it, instead of being it is going to lead to the actual physical experience. Being it first, non-physical, instead of seeing is believing is seeing.
Right.
You've really started to get how the game
Right.
works.
That Believe It, that Wayne Dyer book, Believe It, Then You'll See It.
Yeah.
That was one of my first books too. And
Mhm.
I remember thinking back then in my late teen years, probably Paige's age now, thinking, oh yeah. And then it kind of all played a place with my visual, with diving, and, like it
Mhm.
started to kind of make sense. And then I saw the results of all, like, that really works.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Results speak the loudest.
Right. Tell me about dreams. How do you, because I'm a big dreamer, and lately I
Mm.
have had the most vivid dreams, like,
Mm.
and I don't know if it's, people say like where we're going in this dimension, your dreams are becoming this like really wild. And
Mhm. Mhm.
what are
Well,
dreams
I
to
think
you?
dreams there are different types of dreams. There can be prophetic dreams. There can be subconscious processing dreams. There can be, you know, yeah, I think those are some of the, you know, a lot of times I think it's subconscious processing. Then, you know, when you have the prophetic sort of stuff, that's pretty cool. Or visitation dreams. I just had the most profound visitation dream I've ever had. A week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, that happy to share if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Oh my gosh, it was so cool. So, yeah, I mentioned we've talked a little bit about my son when, you know, when he was, first born, I had someone do my astrological chart and also as an intuitive. And she's like, oh, wow, you have one of the most successful charts I've ever seen, but you know, you're going to go through a lot of hardship first to get there. But your child, you know, he's like 6 months old at the time. He's like a golden child, like, you know, everything he'll touch is gold, you know, and he's a baby at the time. And of course, I'm his dad and he's my favorite human. So
Right.
you know, I see him that way. It's like, he's wonderful. But at 18, I took him to a good friend who was is a psychic medium for a living and communicates with the other side. And I was like, oh, that'd be a fun 18th birthday present, you know? And
Hmm.
she's like, oh my gosh, he's going to be this big actor. And Charlie Chaplin is a spirit guide. I've never seen a celebrity spirit guide before.
So
Like, you know,
funny.
and I'm like, you know, he had just started to say had some interest in acting. He had never done it or anything. He just recently told me, he's 24 now, that haunted him for years because he felt like he had some big thing to live up to. And, you know,
Right.
and so, but a couple of years ago, he got really serious about acting and he's just, I mean, so into it. He's so into it for the art of it. You know, he's watching studying old film every night. And he's
Huh.
getting cast in all these. He's been in like 35 productions in the last 2
Oh my
years.
gosh.
And he just won Best Actor in an Independent Film in the Los Angeles Film Awards. And, you know, it's
Wow.
like, he seems to be on a path, you know, he's
Yeah.
successful now is the way I train. Like, you don't need to the journey is the goal. You don't need
Right.
to be, and he's not super caught up on fame or anything, which thank goodness.
Right.
He's doing it for the art. He loves it. But get this. So a couple of weeks ago, I'm in the dream state. My grandmother and grandfather show up and my grandfather died in the 80s. By the way, it was the first intuitive thing I ever had sitting in church. I was like, I had an intuitive hit. He's going to die today. What's the date? This whole thing.
Oh
And he
wow.
dropped dead a few hours later. Well, he died in 1985. My grandmother, who I was really close with, we called her Moo, Joe and Moo. And Moo died in the 90s. And so in my dream, they're both on like the phone or FaceTime or like, oh, I've got them on the line was the feeling. I connected, you
Right.
know?
Oh, I
And
love that.
it was so cool. And I don't remember a lot about our dialogue. We had some dialogue, but the main thing that I remembered was my grandfather Joe was at Pearl Harbor when it got bombed. And I was, you know, his ship, the Utah, is still sunk in the harbor there. His friend was standing next to him didn't survive. He jumped, swam, and lived, luckily for me.
Right.
And so in the dream, he brought up World War II in our conversation.
Hmm.
And this is my friend from World War II. I need to introduce you to Peter Finch. And I woke up out of the dream 3 a.m. or whatever, like, you've got to write this down because you're going to forget and it's important, you know? So I wrote
Right.
on my phone, Peter Finch, World War II. I almost didn't do it. I remember I was so tired, but I'm so glad I did because the next morning I had forgotten. I grabbed my phone. I'm like, oh yeah, Peter Finch, World War II. Is this a real person? Could it be the friend standing next to him? I thought, you know, I don't know.
Right.
Because he said it was his friend. I go and I Google Peter Finch. First thing that comes up is a famous actor from the 70s who he was the first actor. He died in the 70s to win an Oscar after he died. He died and a few months later he went up.
Oh
And
wow.
so I instantly think of Bradley, my son, you know, like,
Right.
oh, maybe we need to watch this movie together or
Yeah.
whatever. As I go down his Wikipedia after reading about his acting, the next thing is he was in a well-known battle in World War II as a gunner. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. He's a real
Wow.
guy and he was in World War II. And he's an actor, so something to do with Bradley. Fast forward like later that day, I didn't see my son all day, and I was going out the door to play tennis with a friend. I was just walking out. My friend was already en route, and Bradley texts me, "Hey, Dad." Every now and then he'll ask me to help him with a self tape. You know, someone needs to read
Right.
opposite lines or whatever. Hey,
Right.
Dad, can you? I just got a last minute request for a self-tape. It's got to be turned in tonight for a World War II film. Will you help me?
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
oh my gosh, are you serious? I'm like,
What?
of course I will. Like, I
Oh, I just
canceled my
got
plans.
goosebumps.
I wouldn't canceled if, my friend was already en route. It's like, if it wasn't for the dream, it got me to cancel, which led me to reading with him. I'm sitting there reading lines opposite him. His character is from Nebraska, and I'm reading and I'm like, okay, Nebraska, how about I just stand behind you and say moo? Like in, quotes, which is my
Right.
grandmother that was in the dream
Right.
with my grandfather. I'm like, what? So he turns it in that night. Next day, he calls me. Hey, guess what? I got the role.
Wow.
3 days later. I mean, if you go to my Facebook now or his, you'll see him in the trenches as a gunner for this new show that they were just doing like a pilot kind of thing.
Right.
And the show itself, but it's some pretty big people producing it. It's a cool concept. They would do a different episode. Every episode of the show would be a different Medal of Honors story.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, who knows what,
Wow.
it's already
I love
cool.
that.
Maybe that'll lead to a big break for him, or I don't know. But I mean, it literally went from the dream to him filming the self-tape the next day to getting the role the next day to 2 days later. There's pictures of him with like, as a gunner with like World War II garb on. I'm like,
Oh my
wow, that was fast.
gosh. Oh my gosh. What do you see? Like, where do you see in the next 10 years? Like, how do you vision our
Mm,
life? You were
what
a
a
few
great
years
question.
different. We're a few
Yeah,
years difference in age, but like when, you know,
pretty close though. Yeah. So what I love about being 49 years young, your early 50s, I believe,
mhm,
is we get to redefine what it means to age. I look at my parents at 49, and it's like I literally live in a like, incredible wizard mansion with like festivals and the most beautiful people inside and out, all ages, it's like so youthful. My life is a dream, and it's I love understanding. Once you understand that we are actually infinite beings and in eternity now, time is
mhm,
an illusion. You're floating in eternity now. Like
right.
anything is possible with what's to come. Once you understand that, and then you look at where we're at in our scientific development as a society, they're saying escape velocity is like by 2030 we'll have attained escape velocity, which is our scientific advancement has outpaced our aging enough where you could theoretically will be able to keep you alive, aside from an accident, in perpetuity.
Hmm.
What a wild thing to think about. And even the more even conservative doctors are like, yeah, the first people who live to 150 healthily are definitely alive now. And um, so all bets are off. All ideas of what it means to age are out the window. The old paradigm, the old stories, someone who's tapping into their divinity and their infinite, timeless
Mhm.
nature and telling that story to themselves, and and then looking at what's happening on the scientific front, you and I could 50 years from now look and feel better than we do now.
Right.
That's reasonable. So in the next 10 years, it's like you have the exponential, this quickening that's happening in our technological advancement as well. That's sort of a reflection of our spiritual advancement as well, I would
Right.
say. It's all reflections of one another. But you look at this idea of the quickening. Like, it took the modern anatomically correct humans have been around, we think, 300,000 years. Others argue could be way older than that, who knows for
Right.
sure, but let's say it's 300,000 years to go with modern science.
Okay.
Only the last, it took all this time, according to science, that you could jump 100,000 years and they'd still using the same stone axes and not a lot of advancement and evolution. And so it took a long time for one to go to two, let's say, at recorded history, 10,
Right.
12,000 years ago, whatever. And then, but from there, let's call that from one to two, long time where everything's the same, and then a jump. Now from there to the dark ages, medieval times. Okay, 10,000 years ago to 1,000 years ago. Well, that's only a 9,000 year jump. Okay, it's a quickening.
Right.
2 turn to 4. Okay, now 4 turns to 8. How long to get to the Industrial Revolution? 700 years from there, how long to get to the nuclear age? A couple hundred years, So this idea of exponential growth, 1 turns to 2, 2 turns to 4, 4 turns to 8, So think in terms of, an evolution could happen in an afternoon. That would have been billions of years,
Right.
otherwise. And so you start
Totally.
looking at reality through this lens, and it's like, who knows? Anything is possible. And you are sort of in your own private YOU universe based off your beliefs and the stories that you're telling. Who knows what version of
Right.
Earth you'll step into 10 years from now?
Right.
It could be literally like ships passing in the night. Let's say you and I are talking and you're like, Brandon, it's all going to be glorious. And I'm like, no, we're all nuclear annihilation is coming. We could be, our souls like literally passing in the night, where 10 years from now, I'm in a timeline where it's all nuclear,
Right.
destruction, and you're in utopian Earth. And yet there's a version of Brandon and Ashley in each that reflect those particular timelines. So it's really trippy to think about.
Yeah.
I would say it has a lot to do with the individual, what
Mhm.
version you end up in.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm living that, like you say, like, oh my gosh, I mean, like I was telling you, there's a storm coming. It's only because Richard got up before me and turned the news on. I don't watch the news. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have known the storm was coming. And you were like, it is?
Yeah. Right.
I don't live like that. I don't focus
Yeah.
like whatever you focus on, change your story, change your life, all those, things.
Yep.
But
You
gosh,
buy what you pay attention to, right?
yes, exactly. And and so choices, like I always talk about choice, like we all have this choice.
What
And I was
story are you
listening
going
to
to tell?
something, in the story, and these stories that when you hear these people talking, I'm like, change it. Like, it's so easy just to change it.
It's infinitely easy and difficult simultaneously,
Yes.
depending, because if you have a lot of programming that has told you this is how it is,
Right.
abracadabra translates to, I create as I speak. Your words are your wands, you're spelling, you're
Yes.
literally casting a spell. And if you've been programmed and your subconscious is telling you this is how it is, this is how it is, this is how it is, that's can take some doing to
Yeah, for
change.
sure. Oh,
And
believe me.
and once you do, though, it's kind of like, well, this is much easier.
Yeah.
I always say on my podcast, the only thing I'm really good at is making up good stories about myself
Mm-hmm.
that serve me. How
Yes,
can
I
I
love it.
spin it so that, it isn't over if you haven't won. Everything is happening for you, not to you. I think that's
Right.
one of the biggest things,
Oh, that's
fundamental
yes.
to get. Once you
Right.
get that and you start telling that story, it's not if, but when you see the silver lining in whatever the challenging.
Right. That's, that in 2020, we'll wrap it up here, but in 2020, I told you I was teaching my girls since they were in my belly.
Mhm.
And always that's probably one of the big things was everything's working for you. I'd always
Mhm.
do that when they were little, like, oh,
Yeah.
you didn't, it's everything, that girl hurt your feelings. Well, it's all working for you. And,
Yeah. What's it
the 4
teaching you?
agreements, don't
Yeah.
take it personally and all that. Well, we get to 2020 and start talking on the podcast, about parenting and, everything's working for you. And now I see the fruit of my labor with the girls going, this is amazing because I know it's happening for us, mom.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
this pandemic is amazing. And
Mhm.
then all these people are like, what? Your kids
Yeah.
think it's for them? Mine are so depressed in the rooms by themselves. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, no. We are
Yeah.
all for that. We know everything is for us.
I'm
And
here for it. Yeah.
what a, free place to live,
What a graceful way to navigate reality. It's like, what kind of results does that get you? And that's becomes very appealing when you start looking at that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, it was so fun, Brandon. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for
such an honor to be on. Thank you so much.
it's like one of those moments of had heard, listened to you and know you from
Mm,
listening to you on your podcast. And then here I am looking at you, what I've said I was 3 years ago. Oh,
you
when I'm
did it.
listening to you on my walk,
Oh,
one day I'll
oh,
be looking at him on
there you
Zoom,
go. You did it.
interviewing him.
Just the timeline you chose. Thank you for choosing it. I'm glad to meet you here.
Yeah, so fun. Anyway, Where can
Yeah.
people find you, your book?
Yeah, I would love to gift the golden key to listeners if they'd like to receive it. You can go to goldenkey.gift and use the code. Did you create a code by chance, or did they have you create a code? Maybe
No,
not.
but I know I used love.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, you can use the code LOVE and get the audio and or ebook as a gift from both of us, if you care to do so. And of course, the podcast, anywhere you listen to this podcast, you'll be able to find Positive Head. I also did a late night style show called Optimistic, where I shot some episodes. Not all of them have been actually put out. COVID threw a little bit of a wrench in that plan, but you can find one Lee Harris you mentioned. He's one of the 4 that we've released. And
Oh, cool.
it's like a late night style talk show with like live audience and visionary art and musical performance. It was
neat.
really fun. That's at optimistic.tv and or on YouTube. And yeah, other than that, I'm on Instagram, look for my name, Brandon Beachum. And yeah, I think that's it. Smoke signals. I take telepathic messages as well. If you care to send any of those.
What about the Mystic Manor? What about that?
Yeah. If you're interested in the Mystic Manor, that's co-living in an event space in LA that myself and my partner steward, and that's on Instagram, Mystic Manor LA. And yeah, if you're ever in this area and it aligns with one of our events that we're hosting, they're really special gathering of epic souls, in a similar place in their journey, to becoming their greatest and grandest self. So yeah.
Oh, fun.
Love to
Sounds
see any of you
amazing.
there. Yeah, super fun.
And that's where you can find dates on Instagram.
Yeah. If you follow there, then you'll see as we, whenever we have something to announce, we
Fun.
post it there.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, maybe you can make it
Appreciate
out to
you.
one sometime.
Yeah.
That'd
Well,
be
that's
great.
why I asked.
Yeah. And bring your daughters and, yeah, it'd be fun.
Fun. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Ashley, and all of you for listening.
Thank you. Whoops. I paused, right?